Başak açılış için teşekkürler. Herkese merhaba diyorum. Ben 2017 yılından beri İngiltere'de yaşıyorum. Türkiye'ye sıklıkla gidip geliyorum. Pandemi ve işte birazcık o tarafta sıkıntı olmuş olsa da hala bir ayağım Türkiye'de, bir ayağım İngiltere diyebilirim. Blink'le de uzun yıllardır beraber çalışıyoruz. İngiltere tarafında koordinasyon yürütmekten hem mutluluk hem gurur duyuyorum. Daha önce benzer etkinlikler düzenledik. Genelde Tolga Bey, genel müdürümüz, moderatörlük yapıyordu. Bugün maalesef katılamıyor, sağ olsun izin verdi. Ben elimden geldiğince yapmaya çalışacağım. Biraz sonra İngilizceye devam edeceğiz. Ama onun öncesinde şunu söylemek istiyorum. Eğer sorularınız olursa chat ekranından bana özel veya Başak Hanım Aylin'e özel veya direkt yani everyone olarak yazabilirsiniz. Soruları sanırım en son bittikten sonra alacağız. Today I'm very happy to have Will with us in our webinar. Thank you, Will, coming to us, joining to us. We're going to speak about the UK local business culture and doing business in the UK from the perspective of a co-working space owner, because I know that you are in touch with several and different companies, startups, large companies from various countries. So before starting our webinar, Will, if you don't mind, can you give a short, brief history of yourself, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, thank you very much for inviting me today. It's a pleasure to join you all. And apologies, my Turkish is not very good, so I'll have to use English today. Yeah, so from my perspective, I started my work spot back in 4 years ago in a town called Maidenhead, just outside London, about sort of 20 minutes, half an hour away from the centre of London. And we've been going, as I say, for 4 years. We started in a small 6,000 square foot office space and grown now to sort of double that size in terms of our office space. And working really closely with a lot of UK startups needing space like ours that range from sort of your one-man bands or your one-person startups through to sort of 10, 15 people within a company or an organization. So yeah, I've been doing that for 4 years, and I suppose before that, my history is actually in technology. I used to work for a company called Rackspace, who are a hosting technology firm.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the details. And again, I'm very happy to have you because I know you have a good amount of experience about the startups, how they engage with the local economy or international economy and how they grow. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of ups and downs during that period. And I would like to start with how is the UK business life for startups? I mean, the competition, working environment, sales processes. So consider yourself as like a, let's say, Turkish startup, what to expect in the UK?
So yeah, I mean, I think from a UK perspective, a startup is, it's hectic to start with. From my experience, I've seen a lot of people really struggle when they start a business and start kind of getting into the business world of owning a business. They'll have their kind of expertise in their product or whatever they're trying to sort of start up. But there's a very steep learning curve that people have to try and get to. And that's what I think people most of the time start struggling with when they first get into their own kind of, they're starting their own business. So what a lot of people in the UK tend to do and starting up a business in the UK is quite key, is to try and find a support system around you that can deliver the different things that you need that you don't know or it's not your expertise. A lot of people find that moving to things like accounting is one. If you're not an accountant, it's not easy to find necessarily the right accountant that will help support you and also at the right level. A lot of people go in and go, right, I'll go for an accountant that's really established, but actually what you find is you don't need that much at this time. You need a smaller kind of base person to talk to or bounce ideas off of initially, and you can do the accounting yourself using a software package like Xero or QuickBooks or anything like that. So there's loads of little kind of hints and tips that I think people probably get from having a support network of people around them, especially when it comes to starting up a business and if you're sort of new to it. I find that's what most people struggle with when they first start up and they use a space like ours. We end up talking to a lot of our members around here that end up needing assistance in various areas that are just not that's not their expertise, which is actually where we try and help them. We try and make sure they can meet and are introduced to the right people from that perspective, and can talk to people to understand how they would overcome a certain hurdle or anything from that perspective.
So do you suggest, for example, like a Turkish entrepreneur who's looking to do business in the UK or just starting doing business in the UK, do you suggest to do in the UK? So what you feel about the UK startup environment?
So the environment is a buzzy one. I mean, the UK is made up of small businesses, so it's huge. I think I looked it up before I came. It's 5.94 million small businesses in the UK, so it's a huge market and actually makes up a large proportion of UK businesses. So it's a really kind of, I suppose, a trendy market at this point. Being a startup in the UK is seen as quite aspirational, and doing your own thing is quite aspirational. I think a lot of people, and we'll probably get into it a bit more later on, but because of the pandemic, a lot of people have found that actually changing their lifestyle and being sort of their own boss is quite an aspirational thing to do here. So doing that is quite important for them. And I think that's what we'll find post-pandemic, is a lot of people actually start up their own businesses and help with their sort of work-life balance.
Yeah.
From a Turkish entrepreneur's point of view, I think the UK is a really good place to come into. I think there's lots of large corporations within the UK that actually need the help of small businesses, and they actually look to the small business sector for help. Mm-hmm. So if you can somehow tap into that market from a Turkish entrepreneur's perspective and be part of that, then I think you've got a good base to do that with here in the UK.
Great. And when we speak about that much startups in the UK and adding more, as you said, after the pandemic, people are more trying to be engaging their own businesses. What about the collaboration of companies from different cultures? Because before moving to the UK, I didn't realize that much culture in the world living happily together. So I experienced a lot. But what do you think about for the company side, startup wise? Working together, different cultures, collaboration.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I mean, there's a huge mix in the UK of different cultures that are in the sort of startup zone, and actually you end up speaking to as part of a startup. I mean, make no bones about it, we're still probably classed as a startup from our side, from my WorkSpot's perspective, and we have ended up working up with a huge range of cultures just from our one space that we have. So there is a big kind of culture clash, I suppose, in a way there. I think it's really key for anyone coming into the UK market to try and understand how British people do business and how they interact with each other. Because I think British people are really accepting. I hope it comes across this way, that British people are warm and accepting people and are happy to kind of have conversations and do business with other cultures. But there are a few things that you just got to make sure that you do. I know as a British person, I think people quite like people being on time to meetings and making sure they're turning up for things that they book. And I think trust is a big factor. So making sure you're transparent with anything you're talking to about your clients in the UK is quite a huge thing. So I'd just be mindful of some of the quirks of British culture that maybe I don't necessarily always transcend other cultures.
Yeah. It's good. I mean, it's good to have that much culture around, by the way. After moving here, I realized that working with different cultures, engaging with people, enrich your business plan as well as your social background. So help
Absolutely.
You to understand how people do business or talk to each other from different cultures. And I strongly recommend also to do it. And UK is one of the best locations. I think you can experience that cultureness and richness. And
absolutely.
Well, while we're speaking about the pandemic, yeah, so it's becomes a major part of our life, unfortunately, and we are now surviving, I guess, after the pandemic, and things are going relatively normalish in the UK. So, how has business life changed from your viewport perspective, and how, especially co-working spaces, changed, and how did you affect it?
Yeah, of course. So from a perspective of, I suppose the British people and the culture in the UK from the pandemic side of things, I think a lot of people have changed their mindset because of this pandemic. I think spending so much time at home during our lockdowns and various things, a lot of people have realised that there's more to life than just work. And a lot of people have wanted to try and take control a little bit more of their work-life balance. So I think that's put a shift of focus away from sort of major cities. So like your Londons, your Manchesters, all those kind of major cities that you'd associate the UK with. A lot of people have shifted their focus away from that, and a lot of corporates base themselves potentially in London, but actually what we're seeing and starting to hear is that corporates are starting to look at more external kind of towns and areas that aren't just London based, simply because the cost in London is quite high for property space and all that sort of things. We're also seeing quite a large shift, especially in the last sort of 4 months or so, of people moving out of London and into the suburbs or into greener space, just because they realise that living in a city, whilst it's nice and it's good for a network and things like that, actually having a life out in the sort of greener pastures is actually quite nice for sort of your mental well-being, as well as just you can actually now do work from there as well because of
we are not the aliens living in the woods,
No, exactly, yeah. So it's becoming much more popular to actually live in a much more kind of rural location rather than a city, and do your work from there. So that's a big change that we've seen from post the pandemic. It actually has meant that towns like the one that we're in here, Maidenhead, you've seen house prices actually take going quite steeply up. Just because of the type of caliber of people that are coming out to this area. Outside of that, in terms of co-working spaces, that shift I think is quite big for companies like ours. So we're a co-working space, yes, but actually we're a co-working space that's outside of London. So it was always a bit of a risk when we started to see whether that would work. And actually we found this kind of entrepreneurial spirit and small business startup zone that is actually thriving in these sort of areas. And actually what you find is these are the areas where people actually live rather than where they obviously work. So a lot of people would live in this area but then commute into London to work. The shift from the pandemic is that actually people are now can work where they live or closer to where they live, and that's where we're seeing an uptake in our inquiries, is because we're only 5 minutes away from where they live, whereas they don't want to take an hour or 2 hours train journey to where their office is in the centre of London, and have to have that commute, because that's lost time, and that's that work-life balance again. They lose that time on that commute, which is away from family or friends, and that's a big shift that we're seeing just in the number of inquiries we're getting, and that actually is a difference in terms of the customer base that we're seeing as well. So the type of clients that are coming our way now from a co-working perspective are actually individuals from corporate employees. So there are some big name corporates in this area, or even in London now, that have said to their employees, you know what, you can be more flexible, you can work from home. Rather than so yes, they've worked from home for the last sort of year and a half now, and I think they've experienced the ups and downs that come with working from home. It's a really nice concept, but I think a lot of people have found that they either don't have the space at home to be able to do that. So if they don't have that space, they need to find something else, which is what the alternative we provide, and we're only 5 minutes or 10 minutes down the road. Or they just need somewhere that it sounds a bit kind of counterintuitive, but they're going into a workspace to socialize, but they kind of need that. They need that sort of release from their work, just to be able to go and have that
definitely,
conversation with someone around and things like that. So I think that's playing quite a big factor, and I think we're seeing that a lot more co-working spaces will pop up in these kind of regions around larger cities, just because that's where people are living rather than where they work. But I think that's still yet to be determined exactly where this is all going to settle post-pandemic.
But can I say that as like a new starter in the UK, it's not as used to be as popular as having a UK address, I mean London address. Now you can like focus on the other areas close to London or around cities. And also large companies are losing their popularity being in London, as far as I understand from your explanations, because you are in the industry.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's two factors there. It's kind of that you don't necessarily need that London base anymore, and then what they're going to be saving by doing that is quite a large cost in terms of their office space cost and things like that. So, prices in London are sort of, probably double the price of an office space in this area here.
At least double. Yeah.
And exactly, and actually, this area is actually quite high, I think, in terms of its office space costs. So if you then take that to other sort of regions around the UK, you'd be getting much cheaper rates or office rentals there. So that's one aspect, I think. I think you no longer need to have that central London location. And actually, I think a lot of people will sometimes see through that from a UK business perspective, especially a small business perspective, because say you are a small business of sort of 1 to 5 people and your client knows that, having an address in central London just seems a bit odd, actually, especially if you're not kind of delivering services in that area. It can seem a bit counterintuitive and a bit kind of strange to be doing business with something that with an organization that has an address in London, but actually are only 5 people and they live in this area here, Maidenhead. That would seem very odd to people. So I think it's just be mindful of that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I myself as well, I was traveling to London almost every day. I used to be. Now I squeeze everything like let's say maximum twice a week. So even now it's more manageable for me because it's like 2 minutes for me to walk from home to work.
Exactly, and I think that's what the shift going forward will be. I saw a stat this morning. In fact, on the BBC this morning, they've just announced that was it 12% of new job adverts include flexible working. So, and that was published by Reed, who are a big recruitment company in the UK. Now, actually, I think that's quite low. And pre-pandemic, they were saying it was 5%, but going up from 5 to 12%, I don't think is a huge shift. I was actually expecting it to be a bit higher, but I don't know. I think it's still the reason for that, I think, is because I don't think it's been settled yet exactly how this is going to
the transformation is not concluded yet. So still people are experiencing, which one is the better. I think it's going to be a more hybrid solution.
Exactly that, and I think that's what we're seeing. So I know my from a few corporates around, I know that they've decided that they're actually downsizing the space that they've got and saying to people that you can work 2-3 days a week at home, wherever home might be. It might be a co-working space, it might be in your living room, it might be wherever. But actually, then what they use those extra couple of days in the office for is just to actually have those meetings that they're not in the office for, and meeting with their other employees or other teams, just to make sure that they're all on the right track and understanding what they take away to go and actually do and physically work on past that. So it's I think that just the shift is kind of come to that hybrid model, I think, more than anything.
Yeah, definitely. So when we speak about that much outside of London, so what about the local economy? Because we are, I mean, Maiden is a strong city, by the way. It's not a very small or weak economy. I know it's very strong in economical side because we're close to Windsor and Reading at the same time. But generally speaking, when we go outside to London, what you see about the local economy? Can an entrepreneur sustain and develop their startup outside London?
Yes, completely. I think a lot of startups in the UK will probably start up small and focus on their local economy first. So, which is why I think a lot of people tended to think they need to start in somewhere like London, because London's population is huge. There's a lot of people in London, but actually they find that growing it slowly, I think, in the first instance can really help, and using that local economy to do that is quite key. So a lot of the startups we have here, actually, they start in our space and actually focus on the local industry here to promote their services, and then start branching out further from there. So it's a good, easy starting point, so that you're not going the sort of the full route of potentially getting, say you're selling a product, all of a sudden if you go for the big bang approach and you've got hundreds of or thousands of orders that you can't fulfill, that's just going to make you look your brand look pretty bad. So I think a lot of people are starting a little bit smaller and growing slowly, rather than actually the bigger approach of that, and just making sure they have the infrastructure that grows with that.
So what about the consumer side? Because, for example, in Turkey, there's a major city effect in Turkey. If you are like located in Istanbul, consumer perception is like you are stronger than, I don't know, some other cities company. So it's a major city effect. So if we speak about the UK, British consumers, let's say from Maidenhead, they do prefer to buy from London, which means like a posh and strong company, or they do shop around here?
So I know, particularly from this area here, and actually I think this is a general British trait, is that you'll find that people try and support their local economy before they try and support the larger economy, if you see what I mean. So I know that post-pandemic here, there's been unfortunately a huge amount of businesses that have suffered from that pandemic. And so what you found is that the local economy in this area here of Maidenhead and Windsor and all this kind of region have actually pulled together and gone, look, we're going to try and buy locally, rather than, if there's something that I can buy that's just down the road rather than on Amazon, I'll go and buy it down the road, just because that helps put money into the economy and keeps those businesses up and running. So yeah, I think there's a definite culture within the UK that pushes for local industry rather than the wider sort of city industries. I think it's actually seen that you go to the city more for when you really need, probably when you've got the ability to pay for it, because it's more expensive in the city, and there's probably a large amount of expertise in the city areas. But if you, as a consumer, I think people are really pushing for local stuff at the minute, and that's actually a big push by the government even to try and help local, because, as I said earlier, there's a huge amount of small businesses in the UK, and if they start to fall down, then our economy starts to fall down, and I think the government has realised that, so they're pushing for people to make sure they buy locally rather than bigger chains, that kind of thing.
Okay, great. I hope we have convinced some of our audiences to do business outside London, or start in surrounding areas. So another question on my mind is, because in Turkey it's easy to rent an office. It's like a day, or let's say 2-day business. So even for the retail shop, you can immediately rent somewhere. And I know it's not like that in the UK. So how the office rentals or co-working rentals going on? What are the pros and cons from your side? Is it easier to rent and start doing in a private office, or immediate start on like a co-working space?
Well, obviously, I'm going to say a co-working space.
I know the answer, but we need to show the way. Yes.
No, that's fine. No, but to sort of put it into perspective, I suppose. So from a rental perspective, if you try and rent a space in an office here, you're talking a commitment of typically 3, 5, or 10 years that you need to commit to. Now, say it's 3 years. The shorter the term, the higher the rent is likely to be as well, or the less negotiation.
And they are not renting immediately, as far as I know. So they may not like you. They may not give you.
Oh, completely, yeah. So you the landlord of the property that you're renting from will first of all vet you and make sure that they want you in that building as well. So they'll do their checks before you before they allow you. That's a big factor, because actually if you're a small startup trying to get a larger office, they'll go, hang on, how long have you been in business? Okay, you've only been going for 2 or 3 years. You're too much of a risk for me. I won't allow you to take this. So there's a lot of factors that come into it when a landlord will whether a landlord will rent you a property or not. So that's one aspect. Then you've got things like not only the rent, you've got the government rates that come on top of that as well. So that's quite a hefty fee on top of just your rental rates. Then you've got to actually fit the office out. So you've got furniture costs, you've got internet costs, you've got everything else that combine into that. So when it comes to it, you've got a long-term commitment that's actually quite an expensive long-term commitment, which is why things like co-working spaces have started to pop up around, because it basically brings the power of community together to make that cost more effective for startups to actually have an office space that they can use and I suppose take advantage of, but they're also not committed for however long, that 3, 5, 10 years. It's typically a 12-month commitment that they'd ask for. So it just means it's a bit more flexible. And then going back to the point from the first question, that becomes that culture piece, where if you're in a space like this, you've got multiple different businesses around you that you can then bounce off or ideas off or speak to or meet and network and things like that. And that's why co-working spaces in this country, but I think probably now around the world, are becoming more and more popular.
So what about the costs? I mean, cost-wise, is it easy to just try or start, or you need to do like a commitment as well?
Yeah, so it depends really on the level that you come in at. A lot of co-working spaces will probably ask for a sort of a small commitment, maybe 3 to 6 months, if you're hot desking or if you're a dedicated desk. But an office space, they'll probably need a 12-month commitment from there. But that's kind of the maximum they're going to ask for. So compare that to a 3 or 5 year lease that you're going to be, your business or your company is going to be on the line for no matter what. Then it's a much less risky strategy to go down that route. And just means that you've got the flexibility from that perspective. It also means that then there's competition, right? So if you've got multiple co-working spaces in your area or in and around your area, they've all got to try and compete with each other, which drives the cost down again, which drives, hopefully, in some senses, the cost for the startup down. So that's only a positive thing for startups, I think.
Yeah, that is definitely. Thank you. Thank you all your contributions, Will. Do we have any questions from our audiences? Please let us know. No, it's coming. Okay. Let me read it. Hi, Will. I own a toy brand and manufacture them in Turkey. All of the toys I have make CE mark, and they are in accordance with EU health standards. I was wondering about the British customer's perspective. Would it be a barrier for me to enter the market with Turkish-made products? Maybe it's a bit easier for providing services, but on a product perspective, how would customer behavior differ? So basically asking, I mean, as a Turkish toy manufacturer, is it a good way to start business in the UK? There is any barrier from the consumers?
Yeah, no, I think it's the sort of toy market, I think, is a large one. It's very big. I think what I don't know is whether apologies, I don't know whether the listener here is a manufacturer that sells to B2B rather than B2C. But if it's B2B, then I would probably start approaching your sort of larger UK toy businesses and try and provide your products to them to sell on. But if you're trying to get into the B2C market, I would almost kind of potentially it's trying to get in front of the right customers, and it's almost worth trying to test or almost have like a bit of a test of that market, and maybe pick an area and try and sell your products in that area and just see how that goes and slowly expand it from there. Because the more you kind of the more you kind of focus on one area, you might get a bit of traction there, and that a big part of business in the UK is word of mouth. So, and especially when it comes to parents in the UK, and obviously parents are who you'll be targeting for toys, and obviously their children. Parents are very good at sort of spreading the word locally to people in the UK, and I think if you find a toy that really resonates with UK children, if you start small and the word of mouth grows, that would really help you, I think, is probably a good way to put it. So yeah, that's hopefully that's answered the question.
As a small addition, I can easily say that there is no origin problem in the UK. So if you fulfill this expectations, market expectations and regulations, it doesn't matter whether you manufacture in Turkey or Asia or US. So it's all about the regulations and the customer expectation satisfaction. So
that's a very good point. Yeah, the regulations is one thing to I suppose keep an eye on and a close eye on, because the UK will probably be a bit of a stickler for things like that. Yeah.
And second one, hello there, great presentation. Thank you. Our pleasure. I have a question. We are an automation and tech company that